All right. Welcome to our virtual PD session. I'm Rosemary Jane with the Learning Technologies team, and our session today is on um, creating a visual home base in Schoology. So this is our agenda. We are going to be, let me make this large for you. We are going to be looking at using your LMS or learning management system as a home base, and that is providing the context for our content. Today we're going to look at a visual approach. We're going to make it comfortable, predictable, and as much as we can feel like home. We're going to look at usability and discuss checklists or week at a glance versus a home base. And we have a special guest with us here today for this conversation. We're also going to look at how we can build community using our home base. And we'll get into this a little bit more later in the session. And then the last piece that we'll look at today is keeping students on track and on task with your home base. So to get started, I'd just like to open up the microphone. We have a guest with us, Professor Sarah Schroeder from UC. And I got to drop it in the chat. Sorry about that. Here's the agenda. Sarah is joining us, but I'd like her to introduce herself and a little bit, share a little bit about what you do at UC and give a little context around why you're joining us for the conversation on sharing your visual home base. I'm gonna stop for a second. Go ahead, Sarah.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Schroeder, and I'm a faculty member in the UC School of Education. Some of you I've probably seen before. I coordinate our undergraduate educational technology courses, and I also consult with quite a few local school districts and present all over the country on blended learning and remote design, design of remote environments, and use of technology in the classroom. So this is one of my passion areas, is helping students feel comfortable and confident in remote environments or blended environments. So I'm extremely excited that Rosemary asked me to join you today.
Yeah, and we're really glad to have you in here. And so I'm going to go over to the agenda real quick. And before I start sharing my screen again, because I really wanted to open this up with a bit of a conversation around the agenda. So we're going to talk about using our LMS as a home base, and I'm going to get to the visuals soon because we want to have a visual home base. That's the focus of this. But let's first start by establishing what we mean by home base, context, and comfortable. But I'm going to actually skip down to the second point on the agenda. And those of you who know me in my sessions, I rarely stay in order on my agenda. So we're on item number 2 already. But I want to talk about how teachers have been using awesome tools like checklists or a week at a glance as ways to organize for their students. And they're a good place to start, but they're not a home base. Sarah, can you talk to the people in this session a little bit about what the difference is, the distinction is, and maybe how these tools can work together? And I'm going to pull up some visuals while you share that. And mute myself too so we don't get feedback.
Sure, absolutely. So a little bit of advanced information too. I am a parent of 2 middle schoolers, and one of them has been in fully online school now for 3 years and is going to a more traditional high school next year. And one has been in a traditional middle school, is a 6th grader and is going into 7th. And so I have experienced moving online as a parent, as a teacher, in a variety of ways. So checklists are one of my best friends, especially clear, simple checklists or days or weeks at a glance. They help me keep on track. But for my students, for my children and my students in the online environment at UC, just giving them a checklist is a good start, but it doesn't create the community and that home space that's warm and comforting and helps them feel like it's not just them and a checklist and a computer, but it's the learner and a teacher. It's the learner and a community. So when we're talking about a home base, we're really talking about one central place. For you all, it's going to be Schoology, but we're talking about one central place for your students to go where they can find everything they need to be successful. So links to assignments, to tools, to resources, checklists, help guides, contact information for teachers. It could be where office hours are held, or where they can fill out exit tickets, or where they get that voice from their teacher every morning, welcoming them back to class in a little video, or, anything you can do where you can help your learner know they're not alone behind that computer screen. It's the heart of the remote environment. So the home base is used for building community. It's used for helping our students stay on task and on track. And it's also really, really has to be usable. And so those are the things that I talk about quite a bit with people. Is it's where our empathy shines through. It's where our understanding of student and family needs and concerns shines through. It's where those connections are made. So connections between the learner and the content, connections between the learner and the teacher, and between each other, all have to be made in that digital home base. I love that people are commenting in the chat on some things they use, which is fantastic. Yeah, especially for early childhood. You may not be using Schoology right now quite as much. So you may be using something like Class Dojo more as that home base for your learners.
Yeah, and to that one,
yeah.
I want to kind of add, we're not using it yet, but we really want to. We're going to be spending a lot of time this summer preparing not only direct content materials for you that are developmentally appropriate and meet your learners where they are at their age and stage, but also just looking at how we can take other things like that and still hub it or have that home base in Schoology. Because the importance of that for our parents and students, and you know what, Sarah, that's not actually on the agenda, but just in case anybody is in this conversation that wasn't in the earlier part, this is similar to the session that I did earlier during COVID about using Schoology as a hub, and I was showing how to link it in homeroom. But this is also similar to a session I did last week. The recording did not end up being shared. There were too many errors during the recording, but using the My Virtual Classroom with the Bitmojis. But essentially what it's about is tying everything into one place. And Sarah, as a parent of two kids in two different buildings, can you share a little bit from a parent perspective and then even the student perspective, the importance of having that central place, that hub or home base?
Sure, absolutely.
And then I'll get into the visuals of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Because my son had teachers who used Google Classroom. He had teachers that used Google Slides for a checklist. He had teachers that used Google Site for their class instead of Google Classroom. So there were multiple places, and it could be Class Dojo, or it could be Bloom's, or it could be Seesaw, or it could be so many tools that are out there that are fantastic. I mean, they're fantastic tools. But what we struggled with, and this is me as an educational technology professor, and my son, who is gifted, who almost failed 3 of his classes in the 4th quarter, who you might be able to hear screaming in the other room while he plays video games. So I apologize, the joys of working at home. But we struggled because there were so many different landing places for him to go to try to collect everything he needed to be successful. So if Google Classroom, which was the sort of main tool they were supposed to be using, had been used, he would have been able to log into one place. He would have been able to immediately access his grades, where he's supposed to be submitting things, all of the tools and resources used, possibly performance reports or behavior reports, or peer interaction, how to access Google Meets. So he would get 3 emails plus a slide checklist plus a Google Site link. And it was very difficult to keep track of everything. And especially as a parent who was working full-time, and being in ed tech, I was working way more than 40 hours a week, as Rosemary knows. So I can't always help him. And I would create checklists. I would try to create his own little home base that he had to go to get everything done. But it was just impossible to keep track of everything. So I think even if your students, one thing I heard from his teachers was, well, we use it in the face-to-face classroom. So they know how to get there, right? And I kept saying to them, but you're not standing with them. They're not with their peers. They're not in lockstep doing this all at one time. Finding the link is not easy for him. It's extra cognitive load. It's mental energy that I would much rather he was spending doing the work doing the learning, doing the work of learning, than doing the work of finding. So I say that all the time. Do we want our students spending all of their energy finding and figuring out, or do we want them spending their time learning and applying? And so when we can have one home base, so if it's Schoology and you're using Class Dojo for certain tasks that Schoology can't do, then create a place in Schoology where you send them to Class Dojo when it's time to go there. So it's almost like showing up in your classroom, right? We wouldn't just hide things all over the school for our students. So we wouldn't go, okay, welcome to your day. We've hidden everything that you're going to be doing today. So you're going to go on a scavenger hunt around the school to figure it out and find it. We'd have them go to homeroom, and they'd walk in and they'd be connected with their teacher, and they'd be connected with each other, and they would be guided through their learning. And I think that's what's so essential about a home base.
Yeah, that was a beautiful introduction to this. So what we're going to do now is look. I do want to go back to the agenda, and so we are going to look at two examples in Schoology, and these are actually examples that CPS educators have shared with me. So I've been trying as much as possible to get away from my created samples that aren't in practice, and I'm using some that have been put into practice. So we're going to look at both an elementary, a third grade classroom teacher, and a high school teacher, one of our Microsoft Office teachers, who have agreed I can share their content, and one who's already been featured in a Teacher Talks video, and one who is just yet to be scheduled, but he will be featured soon. So we're going to look at putting your content in context in our home base in a visual approach, because you do not have to have a visual approach. This can all be done sort of with a step-by-step. You can make it into a checklist, but we want to look at that visual approach. And we want to make it comfortable, predictable. And then the first example that we're going to look like, it really actually is a place that, quote, feels like home. So for this first one, we're going to take a look at Clarissa from SCPA. This is a version of her Bitmoji classroom that she made. And these have just been sort of almost a viral movement in online and distance education. It became a fun and visually engaging place for teachers to take their students. And if you look at Clarissa's video where she shares this, she even talks about how she chose the color of the wall because that looks like the classroom. And she selected items that she has placed on her wall in her classroom. So this is almost sort of a very literal version of a visual home base. But the elements inside of this, if you look on the bookshelf, they're the actual books that the students have interacted with both in the in-person classroom, but that they can interact with in the virtual space or in online classroom. So right there is Prodigy. Here is IXL. So this is her math section. But just like Sarah was referring to, if there was something that you had to have in Seesaw or Dojo, you could create those icons and you could link to that content, and you could still create this sort of visual experience. Excuse me, my Zoom is acting up. I gotta refresh my screen. This happens in Google Meet sometimes. Come on. All right, I think I'm gonna have to close this tab. Grr. Despite the errors, I do love technology. All right, so we're not looking at how to build these. Other people have done plenty of PD on that. I think there's even some scheduled, but we're looking at how to use these as your visual home base. So I've got open up a Schoology page, and if you need instructions on how to add visuals to a page in Schoology, I have other videos on that. We want to look at this home base feature. So the first thing I'm going to do is just add in that image of that of the virtual classroom from Clarissa. Now, I previously saved it to my computer as a picture. And Sarah, we can get into some empathy and design and making sure that this works the best. I've got some recommended practices just based on Schoology and based on the type of devices that students are accessing work from. Right now, all I've got is a picture to this, and I'm going to do this the most simple way. I'm going to link out to the PDF version of this. Oops, sorry.
And also, Rosemary, just to point out, I'm monitoring the chat for you a little bit. So if people have questions, I can try to answer them.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yay, bonus. All right. We got away from chat monitors in our summer sessions because, we'd have 60 plus people during the school year, but thank you for jumping in and doing that. All right, so now what I'm doing is all I did in Schoology, and again, I'm doing this real quick. I added the image, and I'm just linking to the PDF version. Now, we will have to have a whole nother conversation around accessibility for tools like Read and Write, because the current way I'm doing it isn't the very best way for tools. I can already feel Sarah Schroeder cringing as I link to this PDF. But the reason I'm doing it this way is because of accessibility across devices. So I added an image, I linked it out to a PDF that is clickable, and this will work across whether they are on a PC, whether they're on a tablet like an iPad, or even a smartphone, Android or iPhone. Having this link out to a PDF is an important thing. I know a lot of you work on these and you make those in Google Slides. It is my recommendation that you download your slides as both a picture and a PDF, and that's what you actually build with the Schoology. But I don't want to get too in the weeds of that. I'm just going to create this now, so I have something in my course to show you about this visual home base. Now, if I have that there, and I could even drag it to the top, for argument's sake, like it could be the first thing. Immediately when I have this as my home base, when I click on it, it's great. I can see all of the elements of it. I do have one extra click. I don't know if you noticed that. I've got to click here. I'm gonna have to click on it again. So it's gonna take 2 clicks before I'm interacting with content. So let me remind you of how to make sure that doesn't happen in Schoology. What we wanna do when we make a visual page is we just wanna go down to the bottom. And this little button down here, I'm almost afraid to zoom like this again, but this little button, that ABC, when you hover over that, it defaults to display on a new page. Now that was that hyperlink that I had to click on. To eliminate that click, we just click display in line. And when I hit save changes, now it is sitting here in line in the course. So they didn't have to go anywhere or do anything. But I want to make this even further accessible. So what I can actually do is take this home base. Oops, that's literally not what I wanted to do. All right, if I highlight this, I can right click, copy. And then what I can do is make an update. Now, this is going to be my tip number 1. This is not part of the agenda because this is just a technical little tip. You can actually see where I did this in a previous session. But I'm going to say, follow today's activities, whatever would be your standard message. Sarah, do you want to give me a little bit meatier or better prompt there, or how are we doing? I'm just taking
Sorry,
the
I'm
visual.
distracted by the fact that there's some folks that can't see your screen. So
no.
yeah, that's actually true. If you did pin Rosemary, if you push the push pin on her beautiful face there on her video, then it will hold her in the middle of the screen most likely.
Yeah, so if I pin Sarah,
sharing.
Just unpin, just click on the pin again. So
right
in there, just unpin it like that. And also too, I wouldn't stay in that tile view. Don't even keep me in a pin. Like I would go to the change layout and go to spotlight if you're trying to view the presentation. Wow, yeah.
Right, excellent. Yeah, spotlight or sidebar, either one should work.
Yep.
So
yep. Okay. Well, sorry about that.
What were you asking, Rosemary? I apologize.
Oh no, we're good. So Sarah, essentially what I was doing was I'm taking this. This is pretty self-explanatory as a visual home base. We can get into some more of the elements later that are on the agenda. I would like to do that, but I want to show what I feel like is more primary friendly, which this is a 3rd grade. I mean, I could see this working all the way down to preschool. More of a primary friendly, it's very visual. And then what I'm doing in here is I'm just posting it as an update. Now, why did I do that? Well, that's because when my users log in, and it's from any device whatsoever, updates are the first thing they encounter. So keep in mind when you are creating your visual home bases, and this is one of them, we're going to look at another one in a minute. I'm using this My Virtual Classroom, or they're also known as the Bitmoji classrooms. I'm using this as my visual home base, but what I did was by posting it as an update, my students do not need to go up here and click on courses and then click on my course and then go and click on, the folder and get to, that was still like 3 clicks. Well, if I just take that and post it as an update, there's no navigation needed because when they log into Schoology, there's that visual home base right there. So if you choose to use the My Virtual Classroom or Bitmoji Classroom, you can make this a picture-based link in an update where there's no navigation needed. But there's one more thing I want to show you. So when I click on this, okay, and it is going to take me, oh, I think I linked to the Google Drive folder, and that's my bad. I put the wrong link on there. Always test your links before you publish to students. But the piece I wanted to show you on here is another way that I can do this, this update. So back in this course, I was building this, and let's say that instead of sample, that was Q1, and you guys can organize your courses however you like. But I've got this visual map, and every day my students can know to click on the calendar to take them to today's calendar activities. I can click on my Epic book to do my Epic activities. This set of announcements could be a list. This could be where your checklist goes. Like Sarah was talking about, a checklist is a great tool. You could build it in visually into that into this feature. You could also do, what was it? It was checklists and, oh goodness, I'm already forgetting. Week at a glance. So it could be in your calendar here. Your calendar could be your week at a glance, and they could always click on this, but this week it takes it to this week's list, next week it'll take it to next week's, and so on. So you can customize this so that they always feel like they're in the same space. But another thing that you can do in Schoology too, and I want to show this part before I move on to anything else. I showed making it an update so they get to it right away. You can also take this content. I shouldn't say also. Instead, what you can actually do, and we're going to go to the high school example next. I've got this, but when I'm getting ready to post it, if I just select this little bell here, so on my update, I'm taking my little make course update as announcements. If I select that box and click post, now when my students log in, they see our visual home base. They click that, it takes them to it. Forget the fact that I put the wrong link on there, my bad. But when they're in the course, it's also sitting there as it's called an announcement. It's posted like a banner. So if you're working with primary students and navigating in Schoology isn't something you want them to do, maybe you're going to have them when they click on this icon here is going to take them into a book, or maybe this icon here is going to take them into a test or quiz. Whatever you set those images to be links to, it can be in there. But the only thing they really need to interact with is right here at the top of the page, this link. Now, I need to fix this link. It would open right here, if I'd done it correctly, to a PDF. The only reason why I'm currently recommending we do this as PDFs is because our current state is we do not have one-to-one devices at home for every student yet. And we don't know exactly what type of devices they're going to have. 2nd through 12th are, it has been announced that they will have a one-to-one take-home device by September 1st. Plans are still being developed for pre-K, and 1. And then even the type of device students are going to have, laptop or iPads. A lot of those decisions are still being finalized and communicated. So we need to create in a way that'll work across everything. And one of the biggest things we had during COVID is even on a mobile phone. That's the only reason why I'm doing a PDF. Go ahead, Sarah.
Rosemary, I'd also like to point out that really does help create kind of a tone to your classroom, that when your students log in, they see something fun, they see something that's you, something that's familiar, and they love having easy clickable links. So if you're sending them to the same tool regularly, they may be used to seeing those in the same place in the classroom every single day. So if you're sending them to a digital tool, the same thing is kind of true. And there's a lot of ways you can do this if you don't want to get this fancy.
Yep,
using other images and icons as well. Yeah, which Rosemary can definitely show you, and she may show you some other examples.
Yep.
But remember too that this is just your launch point. So this is really just the beginning of your home base. This is your launch, right? This is get you into the tools, get you into the tasks, kind of point A. And it's a great way to do that in a visual way.
Yeah, and Sarah, thanks for bringing that up too, because I want to I do want to steer us back to the agenda a little bit too. So we were talking about having everything being in our LMS, Schoology, our learning management system. I showed you one example of how we made it visual, and that is through, and it's just honestly by popular demand. I'm not going to lie, like honestly, I want I want to be in a classroom where my teacher has this set up for me. It looks so fun and engaging. I just really love this right away. You don't have to do something like that, though. You can build what already exists in Schoology. And so this high school example. I'm going to get into that in just a minute. But really, what Sarah's kind of getting to is that context. And there's a few other points that I'm going to make sure we really get into in a moment. I just am going to show this example first. And this is from a Microsoft Office teacher, John Haidt. I think I'm saying it right. And so he has done the exact same idea. He's got it pinned as an announcement, but he used a Schoology add a page. You can tell that he added it with added a table. He put in headers, and he's got some of, and this is going to speak to Sarah's language. He's got some of those best practices. He's using a heading, and then he's using paragraph fonts to describe the heading. Then there are all these images, all take you somewhere else. Now there are features that can be added to this, such as a image descriptor. We can get into looking at these in just a moment. We can get a little bit more into those weeds, but this is still, whether we are doing it this way with this, cute, fun, engaging, you build it in Google Slides, PDF, or we build directly into Schoology, you can still create this visual map. You could still do it with your Bitmoji. I don't know how many of you have seen, but I use my Bitmoji in my updates to CPS Tech Talk and things like that. So we're not suggesting how you build in this. We're not even really getting into much how-tos. What we're looking at is the importance of creating the visual home base and giving you some ideas. So before I get too far into that, I want to look at context for your content. And so for that one, Sarah, can you talk a little bit for people who are on the high school side of things? And, John's example here, which it is visually just, I really like this. The fact that it's a Schoology page means that the read and write text help screen reader can help read this to them more easily than the PDF that I showed you. But do you want to talk a little bit about, like, let's say that one of these tools, instead of Gmetrics, which is particular to the Microsoft program, what if this is Pearson and their online content? Like, how can this home base help give some context or a landing point for that? You want to talk to that a little bit, Sarah?
Sure, absolutely. So if, let's say you are a high school English language arts teacher and you're using the Pearson content. So Pearson gives you a variety of ideas for instructional practices. It gives you some assessments. It gives you the text you need, some additional tools, graphic organizers, those types of things that you can put into your Schoology course. You could send students to Pearson and just work in Pearson. But if we do that, we're really taking the teacher out of the mix in a remote or a blended environment. We are just pushing our students through the content. What we really want to do is give them some context for that. So let's say we did create a banner at the top.
If you want to direct me anywhere, Sarah, I can open up some of your samples. You could tell me that while you're talking through this if you want.
Sure. I'm not sure any of them are complete. They're all in pieces and being built.
That's okay.
Yeah, but if you went into Schoology and went into the course we're working, our CPS model lessons that we're working on with our UC students, you could go into the 7th grade ELA lesson 2.
Yep, 7th grade ELA lesson 2.
Yeah, and then if you select engage with the text, number 2. So this is a Pearson lesson for an excerpt from the Joy Luck Club. That would be a 7th grade ELA text. So Pearson has all sorts of resources for this text. It has first read, second read resources. It has pretty much everything you need. But what it doesn't have is a good way to get the students excited. It doesn't have a place for the teacher to add their voice. It doesn't have those connections to their world that might be particularly relevant for them. And it doesn't have easy ways for them to connect with each other. So what we did was we pulled a little quote from Amy Tan, the author of the Joy Luck Club, which is their reading for today. We gave them some additional resources if they want more information on the Joy Luck Club, if it seems like a book they really want to read. Maybe they want to look at that background information from the NEA. So we added a link there. And then if you scroll down to the Jumpstart, you'll see, you'll also see those little icons. And the nice thing about little icons like this, which I can put the website where you can get icons if you're looking for them for free, which is
Platicon.
pexels.com. Not Flaticon. Yeah, I'm sorry. I said Pexels, Flaticon.
It's okay.
And Flaticon actually does have an add-on to Google Slides and Google Docs if you ever want it. But if you go back to the Schoology course, yeah, I typed it in the chat for everybody.
Oh, perfect.
Oh, well, I did, but then Pexels still typed in.
Don't worry about it.
On the brain. Okay.
We'll make sure we get on the right link.
Oh, I love Sarah K too. I'm so glad somebody else. Yeah, Flaticon. Thank you. So what we did then was we felt like the text was flat. It was dry. It was kind of boring. Not many seventh graders are going to get super excited with what Pearson is offering by itself. But Pearson has some great ideas in there. So the theme for this was how are we learning from different generations? And one of the questions in the teacher guide was discussing what our parents or caregivers hoped for us. So what do some of our elders, our parents, our caregivers, what do they hope for us? So one of my favorite videos on TED is the Sarah Key, and it is a spoken word poetry piece by a woman of color. And it is culturally relevant in a variety of ways to a lot of the students that are going to interact with this. And she talks about, in very poetic fashion, her dreams for her daughter. So you can see that we're adding the emotion in, right? We're trying to add the personal connections in. We're giving it framing. And so if you keep going through that lesson, you'll see other ways we tried to frame it. It gives it the heart. And then we add in the first read, second read. And those little icons from Flaticon, which are going to be in all of our model lessons that we're building for CPS and Schoology, you can also use those on your digital home base. You know, so if you want to be really consistent and every little book icon takes you to Pearson, you can put that book as an image on your landing page, your home base, your landing page for your home base.
So
and
you have to do a little imagining here. But these icons here, what Sarah's describing, and this is giving you that context, could be replaced with these, which students know when this is for when I'm reading. And then the context is, well, I'm doing my first read and I do this. Then when I do my second read, I do this. Okay, but this icon could be this placeholder.
And maybe you have a YouTube playlist for every week. So maybe you have a YouTube icon. And when they click on that, it takes them to the YouTube playlist for the week. And you change it up for them. So you can push them to different places in your course right from this image if you wanted to. But the heart is what you're really adding in, and why the teacher is so essential to remote and blended learning beyond just the content.
Yeah, thanks. And I'm really glad we pulled, it also stretches me. People who participate in my sessions know I lean way too heavy into primary because that's my background. That's where I'm passionate. But, whether we're looking at high school English language arts text with a fully online digital curriculum, we are still constructing the context in our learning management system. And in today's session, we're looking at doing that in a visual way. So again, you can make a visual map that you just create in your course, and then you can pin it as an announcement through your updates. That way, when your students are navigating, and I'm not going to link to John's, but whether it's John's and they've got that map there, or they go into the course, it's hanging out right there as the banner image. You can update that week to week as your links change. So, but you can have this visual tie. I want to go back to the agenda now and make sure I talk about some of the things here because we want to make it comfortable, predictable, and that feels like home. Now, this is certainly a very well-organized, this feels to me like a visual map. It's so exceptionally well done. This one feels more creative, but this you can really kind of guide your students into understanding this visual layout, and it really serves the same sort of purpose. So whether you decide to make it this visual map, if you will, with these icons that maybe do correspond directly to the content you're tying to, or you want to make it more of a feels like home where you're actually imitating your classroom in an animated or sort of, online way, whichever way you want to set up your visuals. The point is that when I click on that content, it takes me into content that has been contextualized, that adds the heart, that pulls together more representation, opportunities to enhance, extend, and go further with. So it's way beyond a link. Another one I want to look at is community. And Sarah, we had an awesome conversation earlier, and we talked about how a big danger in the shift to blended learning, and this is even prior to COVID, but especially since then, is that our students have lost their connection to community. And so I'd like to share a little bit about my metaphor of a neighborhood. But Sarah, can you talk a little bit about what you shared with me earlier about engaging with a computer versus the content and then with their peers and their teachers? Could you speak to that a little bit? I think you might be
Yes,
muted.
I was answering a chat.
Oh, sorry. And you know
I
what?
can't
While
be
you're
distracted
answering
by
that,
this.
I will stop presenting for right now, and I'll take over the chat monitor. Go
Awesome.
ahead.
Can you repeat
Because you
that
just have
question
some
for
great
me,
stuff to
Rosemary?
share. Yep. So back into the agenda. You and I had a great conversation around community, and it's a big part of why you joined us today. Can you talk about and extend the conversation you and I had about engaging with the computer versus the content and the people and all of that, and
Yeah.
how we can make this home base that community sense. I'll do the neighborhood connection after, but share that point. You made that point so beautifully earlier.
Sure, absolutely. So my daughter, I'm trying to remember what I've said now and what I've said in other sessions. So my daughter in her fully online school, they give her great checklists. I mean, it is so clear. Like we can open up the computer in the morning, move through in a very linear way, or she can pick and choose, and she has a checklist and she knows exactly where she's going and what she needs to get done. But the course is really missing the heart. It's missing the teacher's presence. She has some teachers that reach out every day and send an announcement or a reminder. They all have live meetings multiple times a week that they connect with the students, but there's very few connections to what the students are doing in their lives. There's very little sort of big win celebrations for individual students, or talking about how we really can connect these things beyond the classroom. And so that heart, that piece is missing, and building community, it's so essential, because when we have found through, I mean, research shows across the board that when students are in fully remote environments, the college, kindergarten, it doesn't matter. They want to use that time productively, not just to socialize, which is a misconception quite a bit for teachers. And Teresa asked how you can do a live discussion through Schoology. You can't. You have to do it in Google Meet. So that would be like oh, you can? Oh, Rosemary's correcting me.
No, that's okay. Yeah, Schoology does have Schoology Conferencing where you can actually share a shared whiteboard. I've got a 5-minute tidbit video on that, as well as an hour-long PD. But yeah, you can do this through Schoology as well. Google Meet was widely adopted by the district. Early during COVID, Schoology had, admittedly published errors going on. Their system wasn't ready to handle it. So we did shift, but you are free to choose either tool. You can have a live discussion going on in Schoology conferences.
Oh, that's exciting. I didn't know that. You schooled me. Thank you. So yeah, but you can do a live meeting. If you do a live meeting, that really is a chance for productive community time. And I think there's a misconception with live meetings when you're doing those that students just want to socialize. Add in some social time at the beginning and the end, but students want it to be productive. I heard one parent say, my kindergartner doesn't want to go to their live meetings anymore because they don't do anything. And they want to do things, right? And in Schoology, they want to do things. So I think it needs to move away from just being a filing cabinet to really being a place where we connect with each other and with the content. And when we're looking at things like universal design for learning and trying to prevent that anxiety students feel and that feeling of threat and risk when they get online, by helping them not just feel like they're interacting with a machine, but they're interacting with a person, we really can help them feel more comfortable and confident. And when a student, there's a great quote, and I don't know it off the top of my head, but when a student knows someone has their back, they are going to be more independent and they are going to be more confident. So when you can show your students through your announcements, through discussion boards, through exit tickets and Google surveys that you send out where you really want their feedback, through live sessions, when you can show them that you've got their back and that you really care about their learning and their success, and you can celebrate them and address their concerns at the same time, you're improving their confidence. You're improving their independence. And I mean, I've seen that with my own daughter. You know, she started fully online school when she was in 6th grade. She's on the autism spectrum, and she was hovered over by adults in the traditional classroom. Within 6 months of being more independent, knowing what she had to do, being confident that she knew what she had to do, she knew how to reach out to her teachers to schedule a meeting. She knew how to email them to get answers. And she started doing that all on her own. She didn't even need me anymore. She could just email her teachers for help. She would go to live meetings. That confidence, being able to troubleshoot her own technology issues over time with support, you know, those types of things have created this incredibly confident, independent young woman. Where if she was hovered over by adults all the time, she wouldn't have gotten there. I also think there's a fine line between, or not a fine line, but I think teachers sometimes think they're spoon feeding students by giving them too much direction or too much support. I don't think you can give too much direction or too much support. I think that, did we lose Rosemary?
I'm good.
Oh, you're good. Okay. But
Go ahead.
I think that's what we can do. You know, we can take the content we've adopted, we can put it into our LMS, and then we can make those connections and build the community. Teresa mentioned Flipgrid, one of my personal favorites for asynchronous discussions. I use it with college students. I use it with kindergartners. It is a fantastically easy tool. It is approved by CPS, and it links into Schoology very easily. So things like adding in a Padlet where students can post questions, or a Flipgrid, or just using Schoology discussions occasionally, and making the questions meaningful, making them purposeful is really important to building community as well.
Yeah, Sarah's statement about her confident student and her growing in that, it really leaned well, and we didn't even practice that part together, to the metaphor of your neighborhood. And so for that, I am going to go back to this example, just because this feels, it feels more like a place that I go, rather than a set of tasks that I need to do. Now with it, and I will say this, Sarah has shared with me her daughter's course content, and this was all developed without this sort of visual. So, but I want to kind of talk for a minute about community in a digital space. And one of the things that Sarah shared was, not wanting to have our student feel like they're engaging with a computer, but that they are engaging with content and with people, their peers and their teachers. And she gave some great examples about, one, how her daughter was able to advocate and reach out to her teacher, but also with Flipgrid and tools like that, we can, and live virtual meetings for that synchronous instruction, we can really create that community. But we can also create that place when we are not able to go directly into the face-to-face classroom. We can create a digital place that feels like a neighborhood. So when we were talking earlier, I was looking at this Homebase and this visual and this example, and I was like, really, this kind of is that sort of visual enhancement or supplement to our face-to-face classroom, and even how Clarissa describes that she tried to make it look like her in-person classroom. So my notes here in the agenda about your neighborhood, the way back out and the way back home. It's safe and comfortable. Sarah's daughter's teachers taught her how to find her way to accessing them for questions, to engaging with her peers, and to connecting to her content. So we're really helping students navigate. So it's not just about like the how-tos of I click here and do this. The more we can build in intuitively is fantastic, but we want to think of this as their digital neighborhood. And there's a few sort of best practices that both that I want to share with you, and that a lot of these I learned in some of my master's work on K-12 tech and enhanced learning, and has really been backed up. It's why I asked Sarah to join us here today. Is some of the things that we're going to design. We want to keep it predictable. We want to build on what we've already had before, and we want to think about changes and empathy. So I've got this note here about the front door, and if you were to imagine going home, let's say, I know we're all hanging out at home right now, but let's say that you go to work during the day, back in the setting where you leave your home in the morning, and you were to come home, and the entire face of your house was changed. You had a white siding house when you left in the morning, and you came home and you had a brick with like I don't know, it went to I'm forgetting all the architecture terms that I had at the top of my head. But if all of a sudden the face of your home was different, it'd be disorienting and confusing. So Sarah, can you talk to them a little bit about building a predictable space, about having some consistency? And I went here this time, and it's that time. Next time I go and it's same, but maybe when I need to add something, I add it as a layer, or I replace maybe a thing at a time. Talk about how to make changes so that students can be comfortable navigating in and out of their digital space.
Sure. I always like to say that navigation is not the place to be creative.
Mhm.
So as teachers, we all want to be creative. But I always like to say that like the design of the layout, the navigation, like that's not really the place to be creative. The content and the approach and the instruction, and that's where you get creative, the tasks you give your students. The more consistency we can have in approach, both within our own classroom from day to day and week to week, where we really shouldn't change the basic structure, layout, how things are turned in, that sort of thing. But also from teacher to teacher can be really important, right? So if you have 3 teachers or 4 teachers on a team, it's like my son has a core team. So it's English, math, science, and social studies. That's his core. They were all doing different things. So it made it very, very difficult because one used Google Classroom, one used a Google site, one used email, and that's what made it so incredibly difficult. So as a district, I'm so excited that you guys are asking teachers to use Schoology as the home base and giving them some sample structure. Because if the structure and the navigation, even of that image at the top, can be consistent and the students don't have to guess and pick and choose and hunt and peck, we've reduced, again, their cognitive load, right? Or not reduced it, but we've managed it. So we've taken away distractions. We've taken away the scavenger hunt approach to learning. And instead, we focus their mental energy on being able to do things and complete tasks and activities and learn. And when we take that out, now the students are spending so much energy trying to just figure out what they're supposed to be doing that they quit. It really can encourage a lot of quitting, and it can actually reduce resilience in your students. And you'll notice in that example from Schoology that Rosemary is showing, in every single lesson, we have an introduction, a jump start, a first read, a second read, right? The structure is the same. And while that seems boring, to you, you'll notice if you went from lesson to lesson that the content is different every single time. There's different activities every single time, but the student knows to go top to bottom. They know to go in order, not chronologically, but in order. And that helps manage that working memory. So it creates basically muscle memory in our brains that we know where to go and what to do and how to process through it. So there's some real science behind consistency. And so Anna, you asked if there's a way to access information on the topic. I do have some videos available on design specifically that I can share. So I don't know if those are exactly what you need, but Rosemary knows how to get me. So if there's specific things I can help with, the design for non-designers, absolutely. And I have some other things on the YouTube channel that I can share too.
Yeah. And for me, you can always just send me, if you're in this session, you can always send me a Google chat within CPS. That's the best way to get a hold of me. Sarah's Design for Non-Designer from Better in 30. She also has another one that she shared with me. I know she said she has to go. So Sarah, thanks for staying in as long as you could. We value your expertise so much.
One last thing I would like
yeah.
to mention though, and Rosemary can send you the link to this too.
Okay.
We do have professional development courses starting at the University of Cincinnati through our professional development office on many of these topics. They're all available for CEUs, and many of them are stackable for either graduate or undergraduate credit.
Yeah.
And
I did, so if anybody is on here and you're on Twitter, I did retweet it, but Sarah, why don't we just make a little list of those resources and I'll share them out on our Tech Talk course.
Great.
I'll put them on our updates, and then I'll also tweet them out on Twitter. So don't hesitate to use Twitter, y'all.
Thanks. And I thank you everyone for letting me join you. I actually have to go meet with our design team for grades 4 through 6 that are building out model lessons for you. So we're working hard for CPS. We really appreciate your partnership.
Yeah, and I am still here, everybody. I'm dropping right now the link to the contact hours and feedback form. I'm dropping that in the chat first. Today's session is recorded, so I am going to show you how to access that as well. Please give it about 24 hours or so. But when you fill out the contact hours and feedback form, if you do want to earn contact hours today, you do have to include your employee ID number. Today's topic was actually remote learning strategies and Schoology. So those are the two topics because we are looking at ways to better engage our students, and whether that is fully remote in the fall or whether we are back face-to-face and we're just using best practices of blended learning. Either way, we are looking at remote learning strategies and we're looking at Schoology. Indicate the school that you work at, and then you'll put in today's date, which, if you can believe it, it is already June 24th. This was a 3 p.m. session, so put that in. If you're here with me live now, you joined a virtual PD session, video conference. If you watch this later, it's a viewed or recorded virtual PD session, so just mark the one that applies to you. 30 minutes to 1 hour. My name is Rosemary Jane. You'll rate the session here. And then any additional questions or comments you have, you can leave those there. If you do need me for questions, specific questions, the best way to reach me is through Google Chat. But I will also point out that our full Learning Technologies team PD offerings are here. Our Tech Talk course is linked here as well. And if you're having any technical issues, we've got our ITM help email right there. I do recommend you turn on the send me a copy of my responses, because we have well over 6,000 responses to our virtual PD sessions since we began those. So then you'll click submit. To find me on Google Chat, simply just go in Google. You can find it in the Waffle or the Google Apps menu. Click on chat. And then you can just send me a message in this. You can look for me in the upper left-hand corner of Google Chat. So if there are any other lingering questions, I'd be happy to answer them now. Repeating the session on badge 2, I had the wrong one this morning. Yeah, I recorded it, so I'm going to plan to put that on my YouTube channel. If you do not follow me yet on YouTube, let me put my YouTube channel. I'm going to actually move that. There's a link to my playlists. The virtual trainings are here. That's what today's session will be, and the one from this morning. The tidbits are those 5-minute videos. I do not have my playlist built for stage 2 yet. We just released that last Friday, but it's coming. It's in development. But this is where you can find all of my virtual PD sessions. So my YouTube lists. Great. Yep, so the badge session will be on there. Give me until the end of the day tomorrow. I used to always say, give me till the end of the day today. My days just keep getting longer and longer. Give me about a day to turn it around. All right. If there are any other questions, you could unmute. We've got a couple minutes left, and we just respectfully popcorn it out. I do see one more just appeared in the chat. I've been using PNG format pictures with Schoology, as they seem to work better than JPEG. But is PDF best for even a little icon or picture? Oh, no, sorry. Let me clarify that. Thank you, Anna, for that question. I was only referring to using a PDF for these very specific, my virtual classroom, people are building this in Google Slides. And let me go into an example in here. For example, this is one I did do a session on. I recorded it, but it had so many errors. I've got to repeat it, and I haven't had a chance to repeat it yet. But people do build these in Google Slides. And do you see this loading? I don't know if you saw it even there, but I'm on a high-speed connection. I don't have competing things going on, but this has to open in Google Slides. If I'm trying to open that from my phone or an iPad, then I have to have the Slides app. It could just be a way to, it could be a barrier for my students as I'm trying to give them access to this. This is specific to the My Virtual Classroom or the Bitmoji Classroom. I would use a JPEG. No, Anna, for everything else, I would use PNGs. Those are great. Or JPEGs, that's fine. Yeah, no problem.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Especially, let me be really clear in here too. When I added this image, I actually did add a PNG. These, I would all use PNGs or JPEGs.
Okay. And that you're suggesting that, so it would only be I forgot what I was saying. It would only be PDF for the like banner type picture that we talked about.
It doesn't,
no?
Not even for that. If you're
Okay.
in this bit, if I just fluidity reasons, yeah. And you can even link to it below if you wanted to, but that kind of gets into a whole nother topic. But the reason I did a PDF was because of loading across different devices.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Any other questions before we end the call? You can just unmute.
Yeah, I had a quick one. I'm interested in using Padlet, but I know that there's a limit to how many you can have on the free version. I don't know, do we have to pay for that ourselves if we want more space, or?
Yeah, so there are not a large number of district purchased tools, and Padlet's not one of them. Pear Deck is one of them. Learning.com is one of them. But then we have a whole lot of tools that are district approved, meaning you can use them. They're great. They're great tools. There's great content you can put into them, but the individual companies set their rules around what they offer for free and not. I will say, if you want to see like what can be done with Padlet, I do have that in my Teacher Talks videos. Drew Warndorf showed us a Padlet and what she did with it. But if you're familiar enough with like what you can do with Padlet, the limitations on it, I can't offer you any guidance from an IT perspective. As a former classroom teacher, I can just tell you that depending on which building I was in at the time, sometimes I would either have a certain amount of building funds I was allowed to spend on purchases, or sometimes I would have in another building I worked in, I had PTO funds that I could request. I've done things like I paid for applications myself. I'm not suggesting out of the district standpoint what you guys do, but if you feel like the tool is something you really want to use, if it's approved, you can figure out a way to get it. My number one recommendation for any teacher wanting a tool that is not a district purchase is to talk to your building principal and your ILT, your instructional leadership team, because sometimes building level purchases can be made with building funds. And we have a lot of buildings in the district who individually have a full Mobymax or the full Brain Pop or different things like that. So you'd want to talk with your principal and your instructional leadership team.
Awesome. And then on your YouTube page, there's more on how to use it or what it can do.
So not on Padlet. There's an example of how it was used by Drew in the Teacher Talks. But no, I don't go into a how-to on Padlet. I don't have videos on that at this point.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
So how would we find the example?
Oh, it's on my YouTube channel. It's in the Teacher Talks, and it's Drew's example. And actually, I could go straight to Drew's, but I'm going to copy this whole playlist because the first one in here is Clarissa's, where she's showing how she made the virtual classroom.
Oh, yeah.
And then down here, Drew's is here, Drew Warndorf's. And that is, they actually use groups. And it was during COVID. I would recommend you link your Schoology homerooms. You can accomplish exactly what they did in an already existing space. But that's neither here nor there. Like what they did during COVID, it was awesome. They teamed up across grade levels, and they did use Padlet to organize activities. So that's down here in Drew Warndorf's session on, it actually says Schoology groups, but she shows how they used a Padlet within there.
Is it
So
the
I'll just-
same as like, is it, I don't have no idea what it is, Padlet.
Yeah, and so district approved doesn't mean you need to use it. You really want to focus on use of your learning management system. And so if you were going to spend your time and energy learning something, well, I'd invest in your Schoology work. Today, I showed you 2 examples. Let me put the teacher talks in here first. I showed you 2 examples today. One of them, and remember today's topic was creating a visual home base in Schoology. So today we looked at using the Bitmoji classroom as that home base, as that landing point. We looked at strategies that we can use by posting it as an update so that students have less navigating to do to get to it. But then also pinning, it's called pinning. It's actually just selected as a course announcement. So it ends up pinned to the top of the banner. So there's not all the navigation steps. We looked at
How did
doing
you
that
pin
with
it again? Could you just,
Yeah,
oh, I
yeah.
see.
But then we also looked at, this is completely Schoology built, so this has nothing to do with the Bitmoji classroom. This is all built in a Schoology page. So we just looked at those 2 examples. And to do that, all I did was go into updates. And when I posted my update, when I pasted it here, I just went down here and I clicked this little bell ringer here. So make course update as announcement. So every time you post a new one, you can just put it there and it'll be pinned right there to the top.
For how long?
Until you, here, watch, I'm in my practice course. So until you either post another update and make that the announcement, so it you can only have one post at a time, right? Now updates don't go away, so those will keep building chronologically, but you will have one pin. So whatever your most recent one, that's the one I would pin as my update, right?
Yeah.
Or if you decide you're done with it, you can simply click remove and it's gone.
Okay. And you pin it. What was it that you were looking at that you pinned it? I want to describe that. Okay.
Right next to the word post, there's a little button here.
The bubble,
and if you just check,
bubble.
Yep. If you just check that, it's small.
And what's the other one?
That's just saying it's going to your students.
Okay.
And that's already default checked, so you don't have to check.
So that's basically like pinning anything. To pin something, I just click that bell.
Well, so what it literally does is it makes it a course announcement. So here, I will copy it again from it down here. So you would obviously probably say more than follow today's activities. That's language I could use, but then I'm going to pin it as an announcement. This is not default checked, so I check it and hit post. And now see it's pinned up here. So even in my materials, it's pinned to the top. Even if later my students are navigating and one of their other teachers posts something and it's, taking priority, like this example here. Okay, it's still, when they go to my course, it's still the first thing they see that is pinned right there.
Okay.
Bear in mind, this is not true on iPhones. It's not going to show up pinned. So if they're accessing content now, ideally next year we're going to have everybody we're going to have all the device issues figured out, access figured out. But just bear in mind.
And she can click on anything on the. Okay, I'll look at what she does for Teacher Talks. Is that where she shows the details of that one?
No, in Teacher Talks she shows how she designed it and why she designed the elements that she did.
Okay, is that calendar interactive? Like you put on the date and it.
I very intentionally did not go into the specifics. What we wanted to look at today was the ideas behind it. So you can take this calendar, okay? And for this one, I'll go into Dion's because I've got the editable version up. So let's just imagine for a moment that that this whiteboard here is the calendar. You can take that calendar and you can link it to anything that you want. So it could go to. So you can link it to the Schoology calendar. You can link it to the course calendar. You could link it to, I believe hers goes to the district calendar. You could make your own version of whatever. Every element in here, you set the link where it goes. You decide where that link goes. So when you're building these, you're setting where it goes. Same with John's example. This is built in a page. He set it up. I don't know if you can quite see it on the display, but you can see very thin gray lines. He built this as a table, and then he has each of these icons are in here and they go specifically to where he wants them to. So you don't need to worry about what this material is. This could just be a picture of the calendar and it could take you to the calendar. This could be a picture of, the Pearson book, and it takes you to the Pearson activities. However you want to set it up, just know that you can either build directly in Schoology, or you can use external tools like Google Slides, and you can build in there and link it. It's really up to you how you want to build. Today's topic was about making your Homebase and Schoology visual and really clarifying for you what a home base is rather than just a checklist or a to-do list or whatever. We want to have a consistent place that our students go to that is predictable, comfortable. One thing we didn't really get into as much, Sarah did talk about it some, but, there could be a place to celebrate. Dion and his example, which I, of course, don't have time to go through every example, but I will show this. He's got a button here that says go back to class. In their seat, they can go into breakout rooms or back to their class. So you can, there's really no limit. You design it however works for you and your students.
Are we going to learn how to do breakout rooms? Because that seems so important to me that they have to talk to.
It's not a current feature in Google Meet. So right now you would have to create your own unique nickname. I do believe it's supposed to be coming. I'm not sure. But yeah, currently right now it's not a feature. So you would create separate times with a separate nickname or repeat the same nickname, however you want to work that out.
And okay.
Yep.
So will there ever be a work section, a work period, like a class that is Schoology construction? Because this is like billions of hours of work that we would have to put into to create something flowy and lovely. And
so the idea is to not have you have to do that. So we are developing templates. Let's be clear. This example that Sarah showed is actual content that UC is building for Cincinnati Public Schools. So when it comes to this content, you're not being asked to build this. Samples are being built for you, and then you would take that sample and just plug in your next unit. You're going to be given like a skeletal framework of that. This example, these Bitmoji ones, those are free all over the place. I mostly see them on Twitter. Use your best netiquette. Make sure that it does say, if they say you can make a copy, like some of them explicitly say, click here to make a copy. They're giving you permission to copy it. That's fine. There is also this template here. Now, John's is, I still have to record his teacher talk with him. We haven't got that scheduled, but there is a version of this that is already available to early childhood. So templates are coming your way where you can start to plug in your own content.
Yeah, I really want to put wit and wisdom somehow as related, and DBQ and.
Well, I will do you one little favor. We are late, and I really do have to go soon. But I mean, I really should have went already. But This is an example. What grade do you teach?
Well, I am the gifted intervention specialist, so my job is to differentiate what they're teaching.
I'm just going to look at grade 1 real quickly with you. Wit and wisdom modules are being built out by UC at a more grade level appropriate with some of those icons, larger fonts, videos that connect to a first grader instead. And so this content is all coming your way. It's all in development right now. That is being built as models for you guys.
That's exciting. Thank you so much for all your time, Rosemary. Man, you work effortlessly.
Oh man, yeah. Well, I did. I appreciate it, but yeah, you guys are awesome teachers. So thanks for your time. I'm going to stop the recording. All right.